So just to wrap up this example with domains and functional units and risks, I want to touch on one other thing, that when you do your midterm, you're going to be identifying a potential risk at an event. So again, you want to make sure, so find your risk that you want to do. It's also an outside event. You have a variety of risks from which you could choose. So figure out the risk that you want to go with. And from that risk, then you can find out and write it detailed. You want to have a detailed risk. So, when we talk about that fireworks display, in this question, in this test question, someone talked about it misfiring. So if you want to talk about it misfiring, and please don't now that I'm giving you the full answer, but anyway, if you want to talk about fireworks misfiring, then you would go into that in detail. You could maybe say that in prior years you had some misfiring of fireworks and that it did cause problems. So what was that problem that you're worried about? You don't want it to, you could do it in the design domain where you don't want it to be too many misfirings to cause disappointment. You could do it in the risk domain, where you don't want it to be a hazard, and so it's in health and safety. You could do it in the operations domain with technical management. So it all is about how you word your potential risk to determine which domain, functional unit, and even whether that risk is speculative or absolute. The last thing that I'd like to touch on today is a lot of people in various assignments have referred to weather as being a risk. So weather is not a risk. Weather is a condition. So we can't stop the weather. We have no control over the weather. So we can't do risk analysis or anything on the weather. Okay, but what does the weather do? The weather can bring various risks to people, to if it's an outdoor event, to stage, to people. Could cause fire, could cause damage. Health and safety issues, flooding. You could, attendee management. How are you going to get them off the premise? There's so many different areas where that could fall into. So remember, weather is not a risk. So I don't want to see anybody write on anything that the risk that they've chosen is weather, because you need to find the risks that come as a result of weather and then determine where that falls with your particular type of event, where that falls. In which domain and which functional unit that risk would fall. And then it would also determine whether it is absolute or speculative. I will tell you, years ago, I lived in Miami, and there was a big international event I was scheduled to attend. And it was in the summertime. And what happened was that a hurricane came on the horizon. And so it was scheduled to, the path was scheduled to hit in Miami. And so what the event producers did was they found a venue in Orlando, and they moved the venue from Miami to Orlando. And there were about 2,500 people that were going to attend this event. But a lot of people were already in Miami and that had traveled from Europe, from South America, from South Africa, Australia. They didn't want to totally cancel the event because people had traveled so far. So they found a venue, they made the arrangements, they were able to cancel their venue in Miami because of the hurricane. The venue allowed the cancellation, and they moved the venue to Orlando. Well, those of us that lived in Miami and wanted to go to the event, we boarded up our houses, we got in our cars, we had secured our hotel accommodations, and we came up to Orlando. Well, interestingly enough, the hurricane changed course and it veered northeast, and actually the hurricane came right through Orlando. So it was a very interesting event. Instead of doing the event at the regularly scheduled time, they contacted as many people as they could, and they moved the time of the event from the evening to very early in the morning. And those of us that were contacted and we got to the venue, we were able to attend the event, and then we actually hurried back to our hotel room where we stayed boarded up while the hurricane passed over. So things like that do happen, but those event planners, even though, again, the hurricane changed directions and they thought that they had made a good plan B, they had to resort to a plan C in order to have the event take place to some degree. And so even the best laid plans can go awry. Oh gosh, as we have seen this semester somewhat with the peer reviews. You know, it's just one of those things. But just always remember, if nothing else, please remember, weather is not a risk. It creates a lot of potential risks that can be absolute, and they can also be speculative. So thank you very much. We'll go on to the next segment after this. Thank you.